Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Capps and I am one of the assistant directors at the University of South Carolina Writing Center. Today I'm going to be walking us through a presentation on writing and organizing your research essay. While this presentation is mainly catered to the English 102 research essay for the spring 2022 semester, there are tips in here that could be practical and applicable to a number of other subjects or courses. So regardless, I hope that you're able to take something away from the content in this presentation. That said, let's get into it. So since this presentation is focused on the English 102 research essay, I have pulled particular quotes and information from the assignment prompt itself. So this assignment prompt asks you to contribute to a conversation and explain how your findings are fresh and original. It also asks you to communicate to an academic audience for the purpose of convincing your audience that your opinion is not only valid, but also worth listening to. Finally, it asks you to do this by summarizing, paraphrasing, and quoting evidence or research that supports your stance. But what does this mean exactly? In order to effectively advance and sustain an argument that is appealing and persuasive, you must also find and incorporate authoritative evidence, provide relevant background and context of your topic, present your stakeholders, consider and anticipate opposition, and write an organized argument that advances in complexity. The reason I use quotes and bold certain words are because these are words taken directly from the writing prompt that ask you and tell you exactly what to do. However, that is a lot for one essay, so this presentation is going to be focusing mainly on the last point, which is how to write an organized argument that advances in complexity. At this point in the research process, you've already chosen a topic that interests you and developed a research question. You have also identified your stakeholders and the rhetorical context of your topic. You may have even begun gathering evidence of various genres that will establish credibility for your audience. In this presentation, we will focus on how to organize your body paragraphs and advance your argument through argumentation and reasoning. Now, we're moving on to the arrangement section, in which I'm mostly using the classical argument model, which is typically organized into 5 parts that logically follow one another. So these 5 parts, while they're not the only way to write a research essay, and while it is classical, so you might think it's outdated, it provides a general structure that might be helpful for you if you are lost, and it is a still practical and successful and effective way to organize an argument no matter what you're writing for. So it starts out with an introduction, which most of you may already be familiar with, that engages your audience, states your position, and establishes your authority. That might be called the ethos. The second part, the narration section, provides a summary of background information and explains your exigence. You can see your Carolina Rhetoric, page 353, that explains exigence further. I actually wrote that page too, so I can highly recommend it. The third step, confirmation, is where you support your evidence. And then the refutation stage acknowledges and counters anticipating opposition. We'll talk about that a little later in the presentation. And then the conclusion summarizes your main points and appeals to emotion. I have a note here at the bottom that says for more on arrangement, you can see pages 327 to 332 of your Carolina Rhetoric for a little bit more detail. The confirmation stage is going to take up the bulk of your research essay. This is where you're going to present and analyze evidence from your sources that informs your stance. So the articles or book chapters or sources that you've found through the university library databases. The rest of this presentation will focus on how to present and analyze that evidence within your researched essay. So moving on to the analysis portion. Every time you support a claim with evidence, you have to explain how and why. You can never assume your reader will follow your line of reasoning. You must be explicit about how you get from point A to point B. In other words, your evidence is not persuasive until you make an argument suggesting otherwise. That middle step from how you get from your claim to convincing your audience that it is reasonable is called reasoning. For other forms of logic or logos, like syllogisms, examples, and enthymemes, you can also see page 370 of your Carolina Rhetoric. You can use the Toulmin method if that helps to see an extensive and visual representation of your evidence and reasoning. I'm not sure if this is still in the Carolina Rhetoric, but it did include a brief graphic that I will sit with for a second. Essentially, you have your claim, and that claim is backed by evidence. That evidence also has backing grounds and a rebuttal. Your claim might also have a qualifier or cases in which the claim isn't true and a warrant. Even though this says Toulmin made simple, I still find that it's not the most accessible method for using or presenting your argument, especially if you're new to writing argumentative essays. So I prefer to use the why and how asking method, which is just asking why and how until you really can't anymore. So I have a little example here. If my claim is that candy is bad for you, why, or backing, it has a lot of sugar. My warrant is then, okay, sugar must be bad for you. Well, how? What are the grounds? Sugar leads to cavities and diabetes. This is where I would include evidence or sources that maybe discuss side effects or health issues, or case studies that suggest how sugar leads to diseases, poor health, and then the warrant there is that cavities and diabetes are bad for you. Now, I might get a rebuttal, or I might anticipate a rebuttal that says candy isn't bad for you unless you eat a lot of it. So my rebuttal would be unless you eat candy in moderation. So since candy has sugar, and sugar is bad for you because it leads to these things that I've backed up using my sources, which are also bad for you, then I can reasonably conclude that candy is bad for you. Final tips to help with logical organization. And I would like to stress that these are just tips, and everything that I'm offering you in this presentation is optional. There is never just one way to write or organize or argue an essay. Here are just some suggestions if you're feeling particularly lost or you don't know where to start. When I am organizing my essays or reading essays, I think it's most reasonable and logical to start with the fundamental premises and then build from there. For example, in my hypothetical research essay where I'm arguing that candy is bad for you, it might help to first explain that sugar is in candy before I go on to argue that sugar is bad for you. Another helpful tip is to stick to one idea per paragraph whenever possible. When you have multifaceted claims for those ideas, give each facet a full paragraph. On the other hand, try not to tackle multiple claims in the same paragraph. This mostly just helps you to follow those argumentation and reasoning steps that I provided in a couple slides earlier, so that you're able to fully reason and justify your claim with evidence before just moving on and making assumptions and assuming your reader is going to get from point A to B without providing the necessary reasoning and justification for them to believe you. You want it to be convincing. It might be that one idea takes multiple paragraphs to really tease out. I would say that's preferable to trying to include multiple things back to back in one paragraph. That usually means you're not giving it enough attention or you're brushing over it. One misconception about research essays is that they need to include a counter argument between your supporting evidence, which is the confirmation, and your conclusion. So this is typically the last paragraph before your conclusion. This is actually not true of what rebuttals are or how they should be used. Instead, you should anticipate and counter an opposing view or consider potential rebuttals to your argument and argue against those as well. So I've already given one, which is that candy is only bad for you if you eat a lot of it. So a rebuttal I might get is, well, candy isn't bad for you. It's only bad if you eat it in large quantities. So I might have to argue for or include that in my argument. I have another example here. I might want to explain the difference between natural and added sugar to counter the argument that not all candy is bad for you, because one of my premises does say that sugar is bad for you. So I might want to qualify that by saying not all candy, not all sugar is actually bad for you. And I might want to use evidence and reasoning from my research and reasoning to support that as well. That is all that we have today. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I really do hope that you found something that you're able to take away from this presentation. If you need more help, you can make an appointment with one of our tutors using the link here, or you can stop by our office at 703 Burns for a walk-in. We are located above the iHub across from the Horseshoe. If you have direct questions about this presentation, you can email us here, and I or someone else will be sure to get back to you. And don't forget to follow us on all of our socials so you don't miss special programming events. I have a link tree here with our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, things like that, so that you can be sure you don't miss anything. Again, thank you so much. My name is Brittany again, and we were so happy that you joined us. I hope to see you at future programming events, and that we'll see you in our office. Have a wonderful day.